Starting Be'ez Hashem Siman Chaf Tes Vayoel Moshe. So he's going in the Shevuos Shelo Yidchku K'Tekates. According to Rashi, it means davening too much, and the question is how much is too much. So he says, Uchvara Marti. I said once, and I don't know where this is ever printed besides in Vayoel Moshe, but it could be the Rebbe said it in the Drasha, in the Shalosh Torah. I don't know exactly when it was said before, but he says, Kvar Marti, I've already said, Hanir Lafi Anis Daiti Befir Shal Rashi Zal. To explain Rashi. Al Pi Divrei HaGemara Bav Metzia Daf Pei Hey. The Gemara says in Bav Metzia, Eliyahu have a shchiach b'mesiv to the Rebbe. Eliyahu used to come to Rebbe's yeshiva. Yom Echad have a nagalei v'lei asa. One day he was late, and Rebbe noticed that Eliyahu was late, and it was Rosh Chodesh, the Gemara says. We're going to see why that's important. So Amalei, my time in nagalei lamar. He said, why were you late? So Amalei adu akimna le'Avram. As it took me time to wake up Avram, Mashina Yadeh, and I washed his hands, Umitzaleh, and Avram davened, because the Avos were like almost alive. They were in the Maras Machpelah, but they were totally with it. So he woke them up. They were like sleeping. So he woke them up one by one. He woke up Avram, washed his hands, he davened, Umeganisaleh, and then I lay him back down. V'chein liYitzchak, v'chein liYaakov, and since it was Rosh Chodesh, davening took longer, so that's why I'm late. So he said, Rabbi said to Eliyahu, why don't you wake them all up at the same time? So Eliyahu said, Sabri takpi barachmim, umaisi leil Mashiach b'lo zimnei. They'll be too strong in their tefillas, and they'll bring Mashiach before his time. So Rabbi said, Amar lei, v'yesh dugmasim b'olam hazeh? Is there any such person alive today? So Amar lei, ikar Reb Chiyu v'anav. Eliyahu said, yeah, Reb Chiyu and his two sons. So Gaza Rabbi, Tanisa, Rabbi made a tainus. Nachtinu l'Rabbi Chiyu b'anav, and he made Reb Chiyu and his sons daven for the Amud. Omar Mashi v'ruach. So when Reb Chiyu and his sons said Mashi v'ruach, B'nashav Zika, the wind came, blew. Omar Moed Geshem. Then when they said the word Moed Geshem, v'asam and then the rain came. Okay. So Matal Neimer B'chaya Mesim. Then when the Reb Chiyu and his sons got up to the words B'chaya Mesim, Ragash Alma, there was like an earthquake in the world. It was starting to shake. Amri B'Rkiya, and they said in Shemaim, Man Gali Raza B'Alma, who revealed the secret to the world that Reb Chiyu and his sons had such a koyach. So Amri, they said, Eliyahu is the one who revealed it. So Asyul Eliyahu Machinu Shisin Pulsi Venura. They brought Eliyahu and they gave him 60 lashes of fire, and Asa Idmi Keduba, the Nura. And he came and he appeared to them like a fiery bear, and all Beinaihu B'Tardinu. And he came between them, between Reb Chiyu and his sons and the Kehillah, and he separated everybody. And by the way, why Dafka a bear? Why did Eliyahu have to be like a bear? Because I think the Maharsha says that he was trying to be monogamous to them. It's not the time for the Geula yet. There's still Gaul Paras, and by the time of Talmud Bavli, the Yidden were under Persia, right? Persia is compared to a bear. So, I'm saying it's not this man for Geula yet. Anyway, so they stopped. They stopped this tefillah. So Upir Shalom Mar Shazal, the Asi Loimar Shaloi Asi Adayin Zman Mashiach. That the point of Eliyahu was to come and tell him, no, it's not the time yet for Mashiach. You see that there were such a thing as tzaddikim, that they had koyach with their tefillah, kol kach k'moy Reb Chiyu u'banav. They had such koyach with their tefillah. For example, Reb Chiyu and his sons, that their tefillah was so strong that if they would do it, it would force Mashiach to come. Even though it wasn't time. Just as if all the Avos would daven at the same time. So that's why they had to be stopped. That's the kind of tefillah that Rashi means when he says it's the case. That's the limit. Okay? Yeah. Now, the Rebbe has a long tshuva about this in Divrei Yoel, Siman Kuf Lamed Tes. He wrote a little bit after he wrote Vayoel Moshe. He wrote this tshuva to somebody, and there he also explains this more about this Indian of Reb Chiyu and Ubanov. And he says According to this, the kasha he asked earlier is for Enfert. The kasha he asked earlier was, how do we know? And not only that, why don't we find the poskim bring down this isser, right? And how do we know how much is too much? Well, he's saying that basically there aren't going to be any other people like this. These are the last people. Chazal knew Baruch HaKodesh that there weren't going to be other such people in the world. So therefore, it's not a problem. Shulchan Aruch didn't have to bring it down, basically. Or if there were such people, they would know, they would have such a madrega of Ruach HaKodesh that they would know themselves not to do it. And you could also say a little more than that a person never knows on himself that he's the person. So even in the next Siman, the Rabbi is going to say that Rabbi Chiya themselves didn't know. So they didn't have an aveir for doing this, because they didn't know. Only Rabbi could be blamed for this, because Rabbi knew, but they didn't know.
He didn't know. He asked Eliyahu.
He didn't know until he asked Eliyahu. But they for sure didn't know. So therefore, you can't have a halach in Shulchan Aruch. If you're such a person, don't daven too much, because
it's impossible.
You can never know that you're such a person.
Yeah, so you're nobody to assume you're the one to bring the Gila.
What?
So you can never assume that you're the one who has the power to bring the Gila.
Right. And you never have to be worried about that, so you can always daven.
Right, it's too unlikely.
Now take a look here at page 2, the Maamar. I have here copied down the Ramban in Sefer Emunah V'Abitachon.
It's a little small Sefer he wrote.
Right.
Yeah.
It's in the Kisvei Ramban, and he talks about this Ma'aser Reb Chiya a little bit. And take a look what he says. He says that a Chacham Rabbi Ezra Zal Kosav Lo Yomer Yispal B'Darim El Yadrim. That Chazal say that a person who wants to have Chachma, he should daven to the south. So it doesn't
mean live in the south or daven? Does it mean live?
No.
Yeah, it means daven?
It means daven towards the south. It means turn yourself when you're davening a little bit towards the south.
Oh, I see.
So he says it means no. Not you have to actually turn, but be mechaven in your heart lemidas hadarim, to the idea of south. This is a Kabbalah thing we don't really understand. Or habahir. So v'alzehayu shlamim unadarim v'toida nishchatim b'darim. This is why we find the karbanis were shechted b'darim, not the karbanis of Kodesh Kadashim, but the shlamim and the darim were shechted b'darim.
But they were burned towards the north.
They were burnt in the north, yeah?
I think they were burned northward, no?
They were burnt on the Mizbeach. The chalavim were burnt on the Mizbeach.
I know they were shechting south, but I think north, there was Rika in the north, I think.
Okay, there was Rika on all four sides. Anyway,
outside was the north.
The Aroid says she's Asher, whoever wants to get rich, Yatzfin, you should daven to the north. So he explains it means some kind of a midah of northwards, Asher Misham Ho'esher. Since they don't know these Kabbalah things, there's a Chazal that says, why aren't Yidden answered when they daven today? Because they don't know how to daven b'shem. They don't know these shemus, these Kabbalah things that he just mentioned. They don't know the Kabbalah machshavas to have when they daven. I don't know, by the way, who this Rabbeinu Ezra is that he's quoting here. It's one of the Mekubalim probably. I don't know who. Okay, now he says, V'loi nearly perusha klal. Ramban doesn't agree with this. He says, Ki masha amru lefisha einam yoyim lispala b'shem. What Chazal say that why aren't Jews answered today because they don't know how to daven b'shem? Lo yamruhu el lefisha Yisrael b'golus u'shchino yimahem. It's talking about not any tefillah, about every tefillah you could daven, but tefillahs that have to do with the geula were not answered. Lefisha Yisrael b'golus u'shchino yimahem. We're here in the galus. The Shekhinah is with us. Ve'einam yoyim lo'ayir ha'ava. We don't know how to arouse the love of the geula now. Ki nistimu mi'Yisrael ha'mayanos ha'oirim. The paths of the springs, well springs of being ma'oir geula are taken away. Behashbiyam shelo ya'oiru is a case because of this shvuah. So shvuah is like a mitzias. It's not really an isser. It's more like a mitzias. Hashem took away from us the power to daven for the geula. K'mash shekasav yishbati eschem nois Yerushalayim. In other subjects, we could daven for whatever we want. We'll be answered. The tefillah was what we stood by us. So he says tefillah helps. Now he asks on himself. He says, I just said that Yidden can't daven for the geula too much. What about the story of Reb Chiya and his sons? The Bava Metzia. He says, "Eino soister es devoring." That's not a steer to what I said. Ki yitachin lefarish she'oisa shah bilvad hayolahem oisa hakoyach. Only at that time they had that power. There's no person who doesn't have an hour. So there's one point in time that they had this power. Every day, Reb Chia and his sons daven Shemona Esrei, nothing happened, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so he says that basically that this is only a special thing that happened one time for one person, but it's not going to happen again. So this answers the Rebbe's kasha about why it's not brought in Shulchan Aruch. And he says, "V'oid eichi tachin loimer shaloi hayel min achurban abayis ad doyer shel Reb Chia ubanav oy b'doyer shel achreim misho hayel gadol v'chachma v'maisim k'moy Reb Chia ubanav." How could you say that there was no such person? He's saying there were such people from the time of the Churban until him, and afterwards there were people as great as him. So why was this a special time? It has to do with that time. Eliyahu's punishment was because he revealed this particular time, right? But that's other times he's allowed to do such a thing. And just to look over here in the Pri Tzadik, Reb Tzadok HaKohen Milublin, he says the same shot as Satmar Rebbe in the Shevuos Shelo Yichku Saketz. Take a look what he says here. It's really starting on page 3.
Yes,
he says, he's talking about Moshe Rabbeinu davening to come into Eretz Yisrael, and he says, these 6 oaths, what are they for? One of them is not to force the end. Upirish Rashi, not to daven too much. Now he says, what does that mean? There are some people who had a koyach to do this. Like we find Reb Chia and his sons, so Maamar says like the Rebbe. It's interesting though, he says in the Hemshech here, he says, he says, what about the other oaths? Rabbi Tzadok says, why we need a Shvuah? For sure we won't be able to do anything before the time comes. By the Yidden in the Midbar who wanted to go up after the Raglim, right? Moshe said, don't go up because Hashem won't help you, and if you go up you'll get defeated. So you see that it will never be matzliach to go up and take over Eretz Yisrael. So why does there have to be a Shvuah? That's what Tzadok's kasha. Interesting. You see, look what the time we're living in here. Where for almost 70 years, right? There have been people who have been temporarily, at least, matzliach to be over on this Shvuah, and Tzadok's saying no. It's not possible to happen. Yeah, he says. Even if you think that it's time for Gula and you're worthy of it, that Chayma is a mashal for Torah, and you have a lot of Torah. So it means not to try to force the Geula when you think you're right. Not like the Tziyonim, they don't have any meaning that they're right for the Geula, they're just trying to do it by force. But he's saying,
they bring their own proofs, from the time that they're fulfilling the Nevuah.
Right, but they don't say that Klal Yisrael is on some high madrega today that we're able to
they
do
just say they own the Bible code or some prophecy, etc.
Okay, but they don't say this, that we're worthy of it. Saying
they say we're not worthy, but Hashem is very merciful.
Right. Anyway, but he's saying, Reb Tzadok saying the pshat is that you shouldn't think on their own. Now is the time because now we're ready for it. You shouldn't be oiler on the support, on the reliance on your ma'asim tovim to think that you're fit for the Gula.
So it's always arrogant to think because your ma'asim tovim you're fit for something good.
Okay, look at the Arvei Nachal, page 5. There's a short shtickle here where he talks about this. He says, By Yisroitetsu, the Parasha told us. It says that the Rivka Emmanuel felt the baby's inside her. So she said, Lo mazeh anoichi. She says, Hinei HaKadosh Baruch Hu ishpia es Yisrael shelo yidchaku saketz. Yeah, Hashem made us swear not to force the end. Ki davar abba be'itoi ubizmanoi kvar nislabesh hadavar b'toich hateva. That if the Geula comes in its time, it will come in a natural way. Ve'ein moinea, there won't be anything stopping it. Ve'ein satan upega, there won't be anybody, speaking out against it. And then pega ra, any, injuries, dangerous casualties. L'chein bo yavai hadavar ahu b'nachas. It will come peacefully, b'loi b'tzar. Mashen kinim yidchaku haketz. Dahainu sheyarbu b'tefillah. He goes with Rashi's pshat and he says, if you force the end with tefillah, what's wrong with that? It will come, the Geula will come, but he says, Afki kel kabir lo yimas, Hashem won't reject your tefillah, v'yavai agula, koinim zmanoi, but yiyu harbe mekatrugim. There'll be many people who speak out against it. V'yiyu adavar ahu b'harbe tsar v'yisurin.
Like Israel, which has so much tsar, and people are saying all over the world, how dare they do this?
There'll be mekatrim against them, right? So yes. He says, don't daven for the Geula before the time, because that's what's going to happen. And he says, "V'hinei ki rois Rivka sheyesh la tsar." When Rivka saw that she had pain, so Amra b'daita ki b'vadei bo adavar b'lo zman. She said, "I must have davened for it too early." So that's what she said. Lo mazeh anoichi. Why did I daven for these babies to have them now? Maybe I wasn't supposed to have them now. Maybe I was supposed to have them later. And if I have them too early, it's going to come with tsar.
Who says this?
The Arvei Nachal.
Who wrote it?
Can't remember his name. He lived pretty long ago, like 400 years ago.
Was it early Akron?
Yeah, early Akron, middle Akron, middle of the time.
Like 50 or 1600s, I meant to say, early Akron.
Yeah, no, it's later than that.
It's late Akron already, 1700s.
Maybe it's 1700s.
That's really late Akron.
Or early 1700s.
Wait, so it's okay.
Right before the Tkufa of the Hasidic movement. He wasn't really. I don't think he was a Hasidic Rebbe, but he was from that time period, 1700s.
So late Akron. Okay, I see.
Okay. Now, one last thing here in Maamar Yechezkel. It's a Sefer of little quotations from Rabbi Yechezkel Halberstam, the Shina Rav.
Who wrote it?
The Shina Rav was the son of the Divrei Chaim, about 120 years ago.
The Hasidic Rebbe?
He was a Rebbe. Yeah. And the Satmar Rebbe considered him his Rebbe. He looked up to him as a Rebbe. So it's interesting to see what he says about the Shevuos Shelo Yichaku. Take a look.
Yeah.
He says, "B'shnois Navachroinus shall Rabbeinu Mishineva." In the last years of his life, Zal loy nasa b'yom adilula shel aviv adivrei chaim Zal at Sanz. He didn't go to daven by his father's kever in Sanz. B'oimrei she'em l'shayar ma rabba hayecholos lifol Yeshua al tziyun atzadik. He said you can't estimate how much a person could accomplish at the kever of a tzaddik b'yom adilula delay on his yard site. Since all our tefillas have something about the Geula in them, al kain yara pen yavor al shvua. He was afraid that he would transgress the shvua. Shelo yidchaku saketz. Ayin sham b'Rashi. It's interesting that he considered certain types of tefillah too much. But the Satmar Rebbe is basically saying not like that. He's saying that only a Chiyu Vanov is considered too much. Okay, so take a look. Last paragraph here, Chav Tes. V'nir de'afsher Chiyu Vanov hayu talmidei Rabbi. See, the Rebbe is bothered here that what's going on, that they were greater than Rabbi. Why was Rabbi not able to bring Mashiach? So he says, even though they were talmidim of Rabbi, v'nichnoim mipanov, and they were humble before him, kemavur b'gemor mikol makom b'koyach hatfila hayu heim yechidim b'doram. As far as the power of tefillah went, they were so
as a group
one
they had the power. They were rabbim.
Right.
Because even the Rebbe can't say, I'll make the meeting alone, exclude my talmidim.
Yeah, but not only that, they were greater than Rabbi in tefillah. That's what he said.
I see. Right.
Those are the only people that Eliyahu said had a koyach to do this.
Oh, because no, hachna, one gets his tefillah answered faster, even if he's not a big tzaddik. Like we know the story that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's son was sick. He davened for him. It didn't help. But Rabbi Chanina ben Nil's davened for him. It helped. So let me ask him, Rabbi, must be Rabbi Chanina was greater than you. Not because he's greater than me, because I'm like the king's minister. He's like the king's slave.
Right.
So hachna, I get they had hachna before Rabbi.
That could be the shot here too.
That's why, because wherever has hachna, it's answered faster to one who has a chutzim. And we find even Rabbi Tzaddik was the leading Gadol Hadar, Rabbi Mendoza, although he was definitely great, still wasn't the Gadol Hadar.
Okay, there are different people, different tzaddikim have different advantages and.
Yeah, but guys, no, that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And none of them are the same as the other. It could be that in this subject of davening, they were greater than him. And the other subjects, maybe Rebbe was greater than them.